Hello, welcome to Crafting for Profit Live. This is episode 8, if you can believe that. And today's topic is running a business with a chronic illness. So, we're going to get a little personal today. We're going to discuss our own stories with chronic illness, chronic pain, and hopefully give you some tips and tricks if you're struggling as well. Now, if you are joining us on the live on the YouTube, you can ask questions in the comment section. We are going to kind of keep it on topic as much as possible, but we will pick out some of those if we see some at the end of the episode. And if you have a question that's off topic or you are not joining us live, then head to the description below and we have a link to a form and you can ask us anything at all and we'll answer those periodically in episodes.
We also, of course, ask that you rate and review our podcast. We ask this every time. And thank you. I looked the other day and I think we have 25 ratings on Apple Podcasts, which just makes me really happy. So thank you to all of you who have rated our podcast. Leave a little review on whatever podcast platform you are listening on or on YouTube. We just really appreciate that. And then for today's topic, I wanted to start out by saying that everything we're talking about today is descriptive, not prescriptive, right? So Angie and I are going to be describing sort of our own experiences, but we're not prescribing what we think you should do to feel better and run your businesses. Everybody's chronic pain or chronic illness or whatever you're dealing with is different. All of our life circumstances are different. These are just what has worked for us, but they may not work for you, and that's fine. Like, I don't want you to think I can't do that, because there are lots of things that we can't do, that other people are doing. So everybody's journey is different. And then also, we are not doctors. So we are crafters, excuse me. And so what we're offering here is not medical advice. We're not trying to cure your chronic illness. We're just trying to make it a little bit easier to work through it.
So we thought we'd start with kind of our personal experience and our personal journey with chronic illness. So do you want to go first, Corey, or want me to?
Oh gosh, you go first.
Okay, she's going to make me go first. Okay, so to start off with, I started this full time in 2016. I wanted to note that. So I was well established, and it was around 2018, late and into 2019 that I started having quite a few issues, gastrointestinal issues, and then joint pain, lots of joint pain, chronic fatigue, those type of issues. And I won't bore you with a huge health journey. However, it took me about 2 years probably to get a diagnosis. Tons of doctors, tons of specialists, tons of things that didn't work, things that worked for a little while and then stopped. just a roller coaster ride of emotions and doctors that would say there was nothing wrong with me, others that would give me a misdiagnosis. So finally, probably 2021 late, finally got someone. I actually could not get anyone to test me for tick-borne illnesses. So it's another story. I could get on the healthcare system, and I'm trying not to. But anyway, so I finally got someone to test me for tick-borne illnesses, and I do have Lyme disease. There's actually hundreds of strains throughout the world, and I actually have 3 or 4 of them. So yeah. That was basically what was causing most of my issues. So at this point in 2024, I am in remission. Hopefully, I've went through months and months and months of therapies and medicines to put me here, and diet, exercise, lifestyle changes, tons of things to get me where I am today. And so that's kind of why we wanted to do this episode, is because wherever you are on that journey, we have probably been there from the very beginning of starting our business to that period of time where there were days when I couldn't do anything and couldn't function, to now where those days are fewer and fewer and farther between. So now I'm kind of managing my illness and running my business at the same time.
Gosh, now I have to go. Getting really personal. Okay, so in 2015, my boys were born, and I had a fairly traumatic birth process with them. I have twins. They came early. I had an emergency C-section. I had some really terrible pain after they were born. NICU stay. My mom had cancer. I don't know. It was very life traumatic in 2015 for me. And after my boys, we got out of the NICU, we started going home. I had a really hard time trying to feel better. Like, my body just hurt all the time. I had really bad brain fog. I just was not handling life very well. And I kept thinking, oh, it's probably just me. Like, I probably just need to buck up and go to the gym and everything will be fine. Um, and, it got better-ish, but not great. We moved to Washington and I had a small medical procedure, just a very minor medical procedure in 2021 that put me in so much pain that I don't know, it was just so bad for what the procedure was. And now when I talk to my doctor, he thinks that the birth of my boys probably triggered my fibromyalgia, and then that medical procedure may have put it into overdrive. And so I actually deal with a lot of the same things that Angie does, even though we have two very different things. So I get joint pain. I get weird nerve pain where my body feels like it's being, sanded by sandpaper, a really bad sunburn. Fibro fog, the brain fog. I also that doesn't seem to be connected to any of my fibro stuff, is I get allergies to things. So I'm just like randomly covered in hives. So there is a lot that has been difficult. It took me about 2 years to get a diagnosis. Why does my skin feel like it's like nobody can touch me? It's like a neuralgia. And through a combination of medicine and lifestyle changes and things, I'm doing a lot better. The beginning of this year was really difficult because a lot of people close to me were having very serious medical issues and some other things. And my stress level went through the roof, and I was basically in a flare for the first couple months of this year. But I'm feeling like I'm maybe getting back to to being okay and managing it well right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell this story. So when we were at Creativation that year, and you were starting down your journey, and you had done some really crazy diet changes, and you were on that diet, and I said something about your rice cakes at lunch and how, like, oh my gosh, you're eating rice cakes or something. And the very next event we were at, I was going through all my changes, and I was like, do you have any rice cakes?
I have found that, like, after all of that diet has not affected my particular case of fibromyalgia a lot. It has affected, like, changing my diet in some ways has helped with sort of the tummy troubles that come along with all of that. But overall, I've not found that diet in general has helped me a lot. It's been a lot of other changes.
Yeah. So I, on the other hand, I have been basically on a paleo diet. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. And I've been on one since about March of 2020, so several years now. And I will never get some things back. So things like gluten and things like that, probably most dairy products are just gone to me. And I have been able to add a few things back, but it is a very, very slow process. So mostly I eat paleo, especially if you were to see me somewhere, I'm all paleo all the time.
I'm
And
lactose free, but that's because I'm lactose intolerant, not necessarily because of the fibromyalgia.
and before anyone says anything, I do have a dietitian. I see a dietitian, and
Yes.
everything I'm doing is exactly what she says to do. So I just wanted to note that before anyone says anything.
All right. So that's kind of where we're at. I feel like, I don't know, those are just a very quick overview of our journeys, but we do have a lot of experience in this area. So our next question for ourselves is, how do you balance managing your health needs with the demands of running a small business? So I guess I can start here. I try to really work in a lot of flexibility in my business. It doesn't always work, not necessarily, but I do try very hard to give myself that flexibility of getting ahead a little bit, so that if I am in a flare, I don't have to be like, crud, I have to film a video. I mean, that is honestly probably one of the hardest things about this podcast, is that it's a set time and we have to be here live. And that was something we talked about quite a bit. Like, do we want to have to like show up when we're both, having a difficult day? If you go back to a couple of our first episodes, I think you could probably see it in my face that I was not at my prime. But yeah, so I try really, to build that in to my business, is like having that flexibility, and trying to work ahead when I can really helps, because then I'm not rushing that day or that week or whatever to get something done. Like I said, it doesn't work every time, but I do also really, really, for me, prioritize sleep, because having fibromyalgia is exhausting, and sleep is very difficult to get when you have fibro, and it's like a cycle, right? Fibro flares are worse, you can't sleep as well, which makes fibro flares worse, and then you can't sleep as well, and so I hate when I'm in that like downward spiral. So I have really prioritized getting good sleep. That includes, basically making my room as sleep friendly as possible, not being on my phone super late at night, not drinking I cut caffeine entirely several years ago because I thought maybe that could help, and I think it has. All sorts of things to just really prioritize that sleep, because for those of you who have fibromyalgia, it can be a really exhausting condition. And if I'm not sleeping well, it's 10 times worse.
Yeah, and so I'll say for me, stress is a huge trigger now that I've finally got my diagnosis and started to understand more about it. So stress management is huge for me. Um, uh, she talked a little bit about time management and that type of thing, but also just mindset things. We both work with a life coach to try to like work on mindset type of things, managing our time, being productive when we do feel good, so that when we don't feel good, we don't have to, and getting out of that spiral she was talking about. So I just talked to Corey the other day. So the past 2 weeks have been very rough for me, and I've definitely been in that spiral. So what happens is basically you feel bad, you can't work, you feel bad about not working, that stresses you out, so you feel worse, and it's just a very bad downward spiral, and just something to get you up out of that spiral is often what you need. And I have found for me, a lot of times that's a break, and that seems counterproductive. But giving myself enough grace to take a break, to take some days off, come back. And when I come back, I'm out of the spiral and I'm much more productive and better able to handle the business concerns. But yeah, it is a lot of like getting ahead and being able to do that, or having an alternate plan a lot of times is what I have. So I have alternate plans in my mind for YouTube. So if I am in that spiral, I can you don't see it because it's front facing for you, but behind the scenes I can change it up. I can change it up to videos that are easier for me to film. And so those don't take as much time, as much of my energy, and I can kind of do that. And then another thing was establishing boundaries, which is like time boundaries, especially work hours. When you work for yourself and work from home, you can work 24 hours a day. Like it's just there. You can pick up your computer at any moment in time. So establishing those boundaries, not checking my email first thing in the morning, like, doing those things for me, adding things, whether that's walking, yoga. I've went through a variety of things just depending on the season, things that relax me, reduce stress, and get me back out of that spiral.
I think Angie and I are both known to each other for calling it quits for a day and doing a puzzle. There have been so many days when I'm like, I'm done. I've done everything I can do. I'm going to go sit and do a puzzle. And she'll like send me a picture of the puzzle she's working on, because we trade, like I will ship a whole box of puzzles to Tennessee and she will ship a whole box of puzzles from Tennessee to me. So I feel like we found those things that really do, like doing a puzzle for me is pretty relaxing. And so it helps with the fog in my head. It helps with my body, just being like, okay, you don't have to sit at this desk chair anymore. Take a break.
And we do both love to read. And Corey recently was like, you have to try audiobooks. And that's another game changer for me, because it gets my head away from that downward spiral. Whereas like other things don't do that for me. So I can do something, but my head is constantly like self-deprecating and being like, why aren't you working instead of doing this puzzle? But if I put the audiobook on, it often like distracts me enough to pull me away from that. So I feel like finding those things, it's probably not puzzles for you. You may not enjoy books, but there's probably something in your life that you do enjoy, and finding those things and just sort of like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to do some yoga stretches or whatever, something to get your head out of that and like help your like mindset, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Sure.
Okay. How important is having a support system, both personally and professionally, when running a small craft business with a chronic illness? And what advice would you give to others about building and utilizing support networks? I guess I'll go first. We're doing first here. I feel like huge factor is having a support system. Now, whether that is If you are running a small business, it may be yourself and you're by yourself running that small business. If that is the case, family, friends, people you can lean on during times when you need that extra help. And I will be honest with you, like I have people behind the scenes virtually that work for me. Excuse me. But I don't have anyone locally. And I will say that sometimes I get to where I can't use my hands. Like they don't work. They don't open things. I could not move this mic a while ago. Just to be honest with you, like my hands would not physically open the clamps. Just having people there that you can rely on to call up and say, "Hey, can you come heat press this for me?" Even because I can't close this heat press. So I'm a huge advocate of like craft supplies for people that have issues, have arthritis, can't use their hands. But if you don't have those and need that help, just having those people that you can call. If you are making t-shirts and you have to get that order out, just having those people that you can call to help, I feel like is a big thing. And then once you get to a place with your business that you can hire people, not being afraid to do so. I feel like maybe I waited a little bit too long to do that. Not being afraid to hire those people, asking for that help, searching out the help you need with your business to help free up some of your time to do those things you enjoy and reduce that stress.
I think it's also important to note that there's some privilege in having a support network. I have the world's most supportive husband. Like he truly would go out of his way to help me make my dreams come true, to help this business run. He does stuff behind the scenes on the business. Like he's really supportive. And I know that there are people who don't have that. So yesterday he wasn't available and I had to single mom it all day. And for all of you single moms, I just want to give you the biggest shout out that dang, like what you guys are doing is phenomenally amazing because my grocery order was like 30 minutes late and it threw my entire afternoon into a tailspin. And I was just like, I had to call my mom. I'm like, can you pick up my groceries? I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know. So I was kind of panicked. Thankfully it all worked out. But I do feel like some of us really have like that support network built in. But like Angie, I don't have anybody local other than my husband where I'm like, can you please come open this stupid glue because I can't get it off because my hands hurt. But I don't have necessarily I don't have anybody who works in my office with me. Which, like Angie, I mean, we have two very different things, but why is our hand pain the worst? Like there's just times where I'm like, I cannot anymore with my hands, But anyway, so I just feel like having that support network, I know it's a privilege and some of you don't have that and it does make things harder. And I just want to acknowledge that. And then two, I think being able to actually rely on those support systems can be really difficult because sometimes you're like, I'm just making crafts, it's a little business. It's what it is, but if you need help, like find the people that you can rely on to help you out, even though I think it's difficult for a lot of us to ask for help sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard to ask for help regardless, whether it's your family, your friends, or you're hiring someone. Like that's the toughest thing it's about asking for the help, like acknowledging you need it, first of all, and then also releasing that control because you think they're not going to do it as well as you if you outsource things.
And honestly, they may not, but if they can do it as well enough that your customer is not going to notice, then that's, the big thing.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Have you found certain tools, technologies, or resources particularly helpful in managing your business more effectively with your chronic illness? Yes, lots of things. I really should have probably made a list. I will say that I have this business because I have a chronic illness. The reason that I got so attached to my Cricut was because it required me not to use scissors. And my hands hurt so bad trying to use scissors. The joint pain in my hands was so bad that when I got my Cricut, I was like, oh my gosh, I can make a lot of really cool things without a pair of scissors because I was crafting I was trying to cross stitch, I was trying to knit, like all of these things that are really hand heavy. And the reason I got into crafting tech is because it worked well with my illness, right? So I do feel like just starting out, like finding the craft that works well with what you're going through. Like don't do something that's super intensive for your mind if you have a foggy mind, right? I think there's some people who just do some incredibly detailed work, but like at some point my brain says, no, and it just sort of shuts down. And so I think starting out, like just figure out if what you are making is going to work for you long term with just how your body and your brain functions. And then as far as technologies, I think Angie and I have both embraced a lot of different technologies, just apps and other things, and hiring a virtual assistant, these things. You may not be there yet, and that's totally fine, but I do feel like anytime I can automate something, I'm going to try and automate it, because why am I doing this by hand every single time when I could be, producing it in a different way, or batching it, or all of these other things that sort of speed up the amount of time that it takes to do something.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of batching. I batch everything. And yeah, automations, I use a ton of those. There are like free versions of a lot of those that like Facebook has its own scheduler and you can schedule to Facebook and Instagram at the same time. And it's totally free. Kind of makes it a little bit easier. You can just kind of drag and drop things. Anything that will automate what I'm doing and make me spend less time on those tasks. And then I will also, like I already mentioned, the Cricut AutoPress is one example. But if you struggle with things like closing a heat press or things like that, try to look into technology and different presses that will help you with that. So think about where you're struggling. And like the glue caps are the perfect example. And I need someone to come out with a glue cap that I can open all the time.
All the time. Seriously, call us. This is the second time we've talked about this glue, people. Call us. We just need a glue cap with wings. Like, it just needs like little plastic wings. Open
That's
it
all
up
I
for those of
need because
us.
there are no telling how many glue things I've ruined with pliers or things like that just because I can't open it. I'm home by myself. No one else is there. I can't do it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. All of my glue caps look terrible because I've like pliered them to death.
Yeah, so anything like that, like I feel like if I'm thinking about like I'm struggling, then I try to like think of like research options, which for glue there's none, but research options where it'll make it easier on me, especially when I'm struggling with those days.
Yeah, and I think there's also, when we're talking about hiring out, I think a lot of times we talk about hiring out just like, okay, I'm going to hire somebody to come in and help me with shipping, or I'm going to hire somebody to do my social media. But hiring out can look like a lot of different things. Like it can look like getting childcare twice a week. It can look like ordering groceries. Like I have not been in a grocery store to grocery shop since before the pandemic. I do my grocery order every week. And it's just how I prefer to do it. It's so much faster for me I have like a meal planning spreadsheet. I order everything I need. I get everything in the spreadsheet. I pick up my order and I don't spend a lot of time walking around the grocery store. For some reason, pushing a shopping cart to me, like my hands in that angle, not my favorite. And so I feel like that's cut down a lot of time. And I am basically outsourcing the picking up of my groceries to somebody. And of course, I tip really well. But that's something that I've outsourced. There are so many other things. Getting a house cleaner is a way to outsource. If you spend a lot of your time cleaning, that could be time you could be crafting. And would you rather be crafting or cleaning? I mean, I don't think anyone here is going to say they would rather be cleaning.
And I tried so many of those different meal delivery services because I live in the middle of nowhere and like a Whole Foods an hour away. And I already talked about my diet and how a paleo diet helps me. Well, that can be a struggle. And then I wanted to do like I wanted a meal service. I wanted like all that stuff just delivered to me. I wanted to like, make it at home. And every single one of those I tried several different ones and canceled immediately because they didn't have the kind of foods that I needed to eat. So I finally found one and it's called Hungryroot. And they have like, I can sort it out and I can just say, I only need things that work with my diet and it removes the rest of the stuff for me. And that has been a game changer for meal planning and just ordering groceries that I can actually eat.
Yeah, I've tried for Hungryroot, and I order it mostly for my lunches and some breakfasts because I'm pretty good about making dinner for our family. Like that's generally on my plate. My husband cooks occasionally, but generally dinner is on my plate. And I've gotten like used to being like, these are the meals that we make. I try some things here and there, but I am so bad at lunch. I'm like, okay, is it going to be leftovers? If there's leftovers, I might eat leftovers. If there's not, I'm just going to graze for like 3 hours. Oh, chips. Oh, here's some carrot sticks. A Cliff Bar. Like it's just like not a meal. And I find myself by the time I get to dinner, I'm like ravenous because I haven't eaten like enough calories at lunch. And so Hungryroot has given me just some amazing options for lunch. And I've been choosing their vegetarian options. just because we've recently, for another health benefit, cut out a lot of meat out of our diet, mostly red meat and pork and things, including pork, like sausages and that kind of stuff, because my mom had colon cancer, and apparently now I'm high risk for colon cancer. And so just trying to make some changes. My husband grew up vegetarian, so that's not a problem for him. He's not like a meat and potatoes guy. So anytime I make vegetarian food, he's happy. So at this point, we still eat chicken and fish, but for the most part, like my lunches, I'm like, oh, let me try all these cool vegetarian options. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who knew? I like falafel. I had no idea until this week that I liked falafel.
And then we started sending each other back and forth, like, have you tried these mango pineapple shrimp tacos? They're amazing, and things like this. So now those messages are happening between us.
And you can sort them by like, how long does this take to make? Is this like heat it in the microwave? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Do you have 20 minutes to cook a meal? For me, I'm like, I want a 5-minute lunch. What can I like put together that will give me enough calories to get me through the day? Because that fibro fog is worst in the afternoon, just because like every brain fog is worst in the afternoon. And will it get me to dinner without me getting to dinner and just being famished or wanting like some sort of snack in the afternoon that I just, I don't know. I feel like it's been a lot better for me having like an actual meal for lunch the last couple of weeks.
So I do want to put up, we do have a code for Hungryroot. If anyone wants to try it, the code is Angie40, and it's for 40% off your first delivery, and you get one free gift. And it's actually like better than any other offer out there. So I'm excited about the code. And it's link.craftingcamps.com/Hungryroot. And that is link.craftingcamps.com/Hungryroot. And Crystal said that's not working.
Oh no. Okay, well, we'll have to fix our code.
Well, you keep talking and I'll see if what I did wrong.
Yeah, so we've both tried it. I like Hungryroot too because it's not just a meal delivery service. So it's not just you get these 6 meals and that's it. They're also like a full service, basically grocery store. So you can get other things you need, especially for me, like I don't eat dairy because I'm lactose intolerant. So we got and one of my meals had this vegan tzatziki sauce for pitas, other Greek food. That stuff is so delicious. And I'm like, I got it as part of a meal, but now I can buy it separately because I also make these Greek chicken burgers that my family loves. And now I don't have to make that stuff from scratch because I can just buy it from a jar, and I'm really excited about that. So.
And I have no idea what's going on. So.
Oh, gosh,
I will get it fixed. You want to go to the next question, and I'm going to get this QR code and this link fixed.
Okay, you do that, and I will go to the next thing here. Okay, what self-care practices do you prioritize to manage your health while running your business? And again, this is what I do. I know that there are going to be people out there who are like, I can't do that because I have this particular whatever. I understand things are going to work for different people. But for me, something I've talked about here before is I don't sit in my desk chair longer than 30 minutes at a time. I have a little timer that I flip from the 30-minute side to the 5-minute side. So I'm up walking around for 5 minutes every 30 minutes. For me, that has gotten rid of a huge amount of my hip pain. I tend to carry a lot of my fibro pain in my hips, and sitting for a very long time can really mess with that. So if I get up, and basically I clean my office for 5 minutes. So I get up and I clean, and that keeps my office clean and it gets my body moving. So I move. I also try to go for a nice walk around my neighborhood every single day. If I can't, I might get on the treadmill. I way prefer to walk in my neighborhood. We live in the forest. It's gorgeous. But it's also the Pacific Northwest. So a lot of times it is raining. So, but I do try and walk every day just to move my body. When I'm in a good place, which I should start doing it again now, is I try really hard to do yoga. For fibromyalgia, that's one of the best things you can do. Moving your body, stretching those joints, getting that muscle adhesion. Like, your muscles kind of adhere. I don't even know. Adhere to your bones. It's not good. You need to like stretch that out, release that tension. Yoga has been really helpful for me in that sense. It's also helps a lot with that hip pain. I do struggle sometimes with yoga because my hands hurt. So a lot of times, I'm in downward dog and my wrists and my hands are screaming at me. So I do have to like really be careful. Like, okay, I need to choose a yoga thing that's not going to have me on my hands all the time, because these are things you have to sort of mitigate when your body hurts in different ways. I already mentioned sleep. Sleep is a huge one. I try really hard to get as much sleep as possible, whether that sometimes includes a nap. I'm not even a very good napper. I try and nap I rest, I wake up wondering what day of the week it is. But I know that a lot of people, they just take a nap in the afternoon. There's a lot of cultures that just take a nap in the afternoon. And I think that that's probably really healthy to be able to take that rest and then maybe do some work in the evening. How's it going over there, Angie?
I did fix the QR code. It's the shortener we use is not like it's down or
Oh,
something. So, but I did
okay.
fix the QR code. So if you want to scan the QR code if you're on the YouTube live, and we will have it fixed before the podcast. How about
Yeah, that sounds good.
that?
All right. So what practices do you use to prioritize your health?
So I will say that I literally schedule in some type of physical activity. Like write it on my daily schedule instead of just being like I'm going to I think I could do I do like pencil it in and I block the time off and so I don't put anything else during that time and I make sure to use that time as like exercise type of time. Um and then I mentioned before like stress is number 1 for me and I think that modifying my morning routine was the best thing I ever did. I was the person that got up at 5:30, picked up my phone while I was putting my tea on, and started checking email, checking Facebook, checking Instagram, and now I have that like I basically set a thing on my phone where it won't allow me to open it until a certain time in the morning. And I do other things in the morning, like, that I enjoy that reduce stress, like, I read, I do this, I do that. So, like, the enjoyment factor, I put first, so I start my day on a good note, and I feel like that's just been kind of a life changer for me.
I feel like having that time, I think my relaxation time is in the evening. Like I feel pretty good in the morning usually. And I have been trying to be like not straight out to my desk in the morning, make my coffee, say hello to my children, like pet my dog, those sorts of things. But my brain is usually pretty good in the morning. But I've given myself a lot of time in the afternoons lately to just be like, let's have some time, have some space to kind of
Yeah.
de-stress.
I'm definitely more on in the morning, but 5:30 was a little bit ridiculous, so just taking a little bit of time and not starting until 7 makes it my life a little bit better.
I have the problem. So I live up Northwest Washington. It is very light here in the summer and very dark in the winter. And so in the summer, and the person who built our house, bless him, put a skylight right above our bed. So it is light oh my gosh, I can hear my dog running around out there. Sorry, everyone. Anyway, it is light at like 4:30 in the morning here. So in the summer, I'm often up earlier just because my body's like, hello, sunshine, let's get up and do things. And then in the winter, I'm like, oh, it's 9 a.m. Should I get out of bed? It's still dark.
Yeah, I do feel like, it does change with the seasons as well. There's certain like, in the winter, maybe I feel like working less or I need to change up, like, the exercise mode of exercise. When it's nice, I do different things. It gets way too hot here to exercise outside, by the way, so I'll be changing things up soon again. But, yeah, like, changing things up, I feel like, and not just eliminating it, which is what I tended to do before.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna do a daily walk, and then it would get too hot, and I'd be like, "Well, I'm not going on my daily walk." Like, instead of eliminating it, change it up, do something else instead of eliminating it.
Yeah, I think just having time set aside each day to do purposeful movement is what I think I've called it in the past, where it's like, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to hop on my Peloton and bike very slowly because I'm not going to be doing any crazy workouts because my hips won't let me. My parents live down the street, so we get together, we go for evening walks. It's just like trying to get my body in motion because the three biggest things for fibromyalgia is better sleep, less stress, and moderate movement, right? Those are the three things my doctor says. And I'm like, oh yes, I'm just going to stress less. Okay, sure. And sleep better. Okay. But I'm like, moderate movement. I'm like, okay, I think I can do that. Cause you don't want to move too much because you can hurt yourself. So I try really hard to just make this sort of purposeful movement every day.
Yeah, it's like, of those things, that one I can definitely do.
Right.
Okay, how do you establish and maintain boundaries to prevent burnout and protect your health? Um, I would say a big one for me was, establishing, like, a dedicated work area. When you work from your home, sometimes it's like the couch is your work area, and that's not very healthy because you're sitting on the couch at night trying to watch TV and all you think about is work because your computer's right there. Um, the stuff you were weeding, I was so guilty of that. Like something I was weeding was right there on the couch. So just like establishing some sort of separate work area really helped me make that boundary, life and work a boundary between the 2. And it doesn't have to be I don't feel like it has to be a huge separation, but just something where when you step out of that space, you are back to, like, your life, your family. You're paying attention to that. You're not paying attention to those things you need to weed or the shirts you need to make. You are back into, like, family mode or family time. So just having some kind of boundary that switched my mind from business to, like, family.
And for me, it was learning to say no. I don't like to say no, guys. I have a really difficult time. I think as women, we don't like to say no. We're taught to be nice and to be accommodating. So learning how to say no was difficult for me. So whether that's saying, no, I can't take any new orders right now, or no, I cannot finish this by that date, or sorry, I've got this, and this, we're going to have to postpone it, or whatever it is. Like getting that gumption to be able to say that's not going to work for me right now and to put yourself first it's very difficult. I find it very hard and I'm not perfect at it, but I have said no probably more in the last 2 years than I've ever said it in my life.
Yeah, I tend to be a people pleaser, so I am definitely working on that because I just say yes just to make other people happy.
Same. We want people to be happy.
But not at the cost of your own health. So, like, there has
Right.
to be some kind of line, like
Yeah. And I think, there's been times where I've been working with somebody and I'm like, I know we agreed on this due date. Would it be okay if I took an extra 3 days? I'm in the middle of a flare and I'm just having a very difficult time. And I'm pretty much sure, unless it was like a deadline for like a wedding or something that's like just cannot be moved, most people are like, oh my God, yes, take care of yourself. Because anytime anybody comes to me, like I'm having a problem, I'm like, oh my God, take care of yourself. Like I don't want anybody to feel like they can't take care of themselves. And I need to think about that the same way for me as well. All right. Have you found being open about your health challenges has impacted your business in any way? I think so. I feel like I've talked about fibromyalgia quite a bit in my videos. Mostly I talk about it just saying like I've got chronic pain in my hands because I feel like that's the thing that affects my crafting the most. And I always get comments about people who are, or people who are, I don't think happy to learn is the right phrase, but people don't feel quite so alone, right? Like I think just anytime we share what we've been through, it happens every time I share about being a mom with babies in the NICU. NICU moms come out of the woodwork like, oh, we're like a club, right? And now I'm part of that fibro club and Angie's part of the Lyme disease club. And there's just something about having other people around you that are kind of going through the same thing that makes you feel less alone.
I feel like when I started thinking about things from a perspective of a crafter and like the auto press or the glue caps and things like that, that would make my life easier and started talking about them, people were like, oh, we totally need that. There's all kinds of people out there with various hand issues, whether it's arthritis, joint pain, any like their hand issues are very common. And like craft brands need to get on board with this. Like I
I
can't,
think Angie
I'm
and
just
I
really
need to,
preach it.
we need another thing. We need to start a craft supply business. How do we I don't even know where you would start for that, but I feel like we need craft business for people whose hands hurt. We probably need a better title than that though, because that seems like a lot to put on a label.
Not very catchy, but definitely in demand, I feel like. So yeah, I feel like that just opening up about that with some of those like reviews. I did some short reels on glue caps and they did great just because like seriously, I could not open the glue cap.
Even like the wing nuts on, or not, they're not wing nuts. I want them to be wing nuts on the PYD Life tumbler press. It has little like screws that you twist. They're like little hand screws and you twist them. I need those to be wing nuts, not screws, because
Yeah.
those little screws are so hard for me to open and close to change out the size of my tumbler press insert that there's been times where I'm like, I'm not doing this today. But if it had wing nuts and I could actually get a grip on there, we'd be in business. So I do feel like, yeah, we need to work on somehow getting all of our random ideas for those of us with hand pain into the, helping hands. Somebody said we should call it helping hands. That's really cute, Judy. I love it.
Maybe if we like all keep talking about it, someone will listen
Someone
eventually.
will listen. Yelling it into the ether.
We'll just keep yelling about it every time we see something bad on a design on a product.
All right. So is it my turn? Oh, no, it's your
I
turn.
don't know.
Sorry.
Okay. So, how do you navigate the unpredictability of chronic illness or pain while still meeting the demands of your business? And this is probably the hardest one to do. I will just say that. And this is the one that gets me every time when I'm in my spiral to keep spiraling down because yeah, it just makes me tense up just thinking about it. So, yes, this is the hardest thing to do. Um, a few like things that I try to do, work ahead as much as possible. That way, when I have a day, I can give myself grace and just say, okay, today it's not going to happen. It's going to be all day on the couch or working a puzzle day, something like that. Um, so working ahead as much as possible. And I would say like having a plan to pivot if I need a plan to pivot. So whatever that means to you. For me, it's like YouTube video ideas that I have that would be easier for me to film if I'm having a day where like a full review on a heat press is just not going to happen. So whatever that looks like for you, it might be like a pivot of like, I'm going to order DTF prints to make it easier on myself instead of cutting this stuff on my Cricut and weeding it out. It can be a pivot of like, I'm going to hire a local teenager to help me like do this weeding, like whatever that pivot looks like to you, just having that plan in place of and accepting that you need that help. Um, and I feel like that's my top two.
Yeah, I think for me, I always joke with my husband that I feel like fibromyalgia feels like a Russian roulette of symptoms. Like, what's it going to be today? Right? I'm feeling pretty good, and then all of a sudden, like, I can't think straight, and I'm like, everything else feels fine, but like my brain is broken. Or I wake up one morning and I'm like, my hands hurt. I don't know how I'm going to get through today, or, things like that. So the unpredictability is, I think, the hardest thing for me. And it was the hardest thing for starting this podcast. It's the hardest thing when we run our camps because, we don't know, are we going to be on it for those 3 days? Because we are working a lot those 3 days and they're scheduled out. So it's not like we can change them. So I do think that unpredictability is one of the biggest things. And yeah, I do a lot of the same things Angie does. I work ahead, just trying to work ahead. A lot of times for me, and I think this works for a lot of crafters too, is I pivot to design when I'm having a difficult day. So whether that's finding designs on Etsy if you don't design yourself, or for me, it's just popping into Illustrator. Like, okay, I'm going to sit at my computer, get up every 30 minutes and walk around, but I'm going to sit at my computer today because there's just no way that I'm going to be able to like make stuff. Like my body is just too tired. My brain is a little dead. So a lot of times I pivot to doing computer stuff where it's just like, okay, I can, even if I'm going to schedule out Facebook, I'm going to pay my bills, whatever it is. It's like, it doesn't require as much of me physically as some of the other stuff I do. It's not me over here wrestling to get a brand new laser cutter out of the box, right? It's just one of those things where it's like, what can I handle today? And it is pivoting quite a bit. And then I do feel like, again, saying no, like just being like, I can't today. I mean, there's been times where like this week, I was like, I'm going to work on this website that Angie and I are working on. And I was like, that didn't happen. And she's like, okay, because we know it will happen just on a day when we're all feeling a little better.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I like train of thought. Yeah, I have just completely lost it. Okay.
Your train of thought derailed, as my boys say. It was going a direction.
It was going one direction and it's gone. Well, I will say that you mentioned the camps and us doing them together is one benefit. Going back to like having that person to lean on, because like if like for instance, Crafting for Profit camp was in January this year. I was having a really tough time. Corey took a lot of it. Sublimation camp came along May. Corey was having some things. I took a lot of it. So we just sort of like leaned on each other. So having someone that you can lean on, going back to that, whether that is a business partner or someone like family and friends. So we definitely do that as business owners as well.
Yeah, I think finding somebody, even if it's just another person in your community, I think we talked about this in our craft fair episode. maybe. Finding just somebody in your community that you can kind of become friends with and rely on, even if you're competitors. Like, I mean, Angie and I literally, if you look on websites, who's Corey's biggest competitor on, search engine websites? It's always Angie. But we've decided instead of doing the competition thing, we're going to do the collaboration thing. And that has actually worked out really well for both of us when it comes to our illnesses.
I the thought came back. So we've talked a lot about like people with hand issues. So if I'm having trouble with my hands that day, I think about things that don't use my hands. So like maybe I need to sit down and like brainstorm some like new videos, new things I need to do. I could brainstorm things and maybe like voice them into my phone. I can like so for me, I write blog posts. I'll like voice them into my phone, into the notes app. It transcribes it for you. And it's good enough for me to get started on a blog post at a later date. And I don't have to use my hands. So I think about things like in those terms as well, like what is like the issue of the day, because mine can move from day to day. The issue of the day, what is it? What can I do that doesn't use that portion of my brain, my hands, my shoulders, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think that finding that part of your body and giving that part of your body a rest is just as important as giving your whole body a rest. Like, I can go and sit and do a puzzle, but if my hips are killing me, that's not on the table, because then I have to sit in a chair anyway, and the chair is what's killing me. So when my hips are killing me, I will often go for a walk because that's actually the thing that hurts the least. I mean, it still hurts, but it's like at least I'm moving and trying to get some movement into my hips. Or it's going to bed. Sometimes it's just like my body cannot function. So it's trying to just figure out what works best with what my body's doing on any given day.
I think that's important because we're talking about strategies for business. However, there are days when it's just not going to happen. It's going to be a couch day, um, binge watching the new season of Bridgerton because that's what happened this past weekend. So different things like that are it's definitely going to be those days sometimes. So we don't always like, okay, I'm going to use these strategies. Sometimes it's just not in the cards. There's too much. It's too much. Can't handle it. It's going to be binge watch the latest Netflix series day.
Yeah. I feel like we've kind of answered number 9 here over the course of this whole. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I'm moving to number 10. You guys won't even know what number 9 is. So this is the one that I feel like also is just really difficult sometimes. And it's, how do you stay motivated and connected to your passion to craft even on difficult days? And there are some days when I'll just be honest, when I am not motivated. And I just have to give myself that space. Again, sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to pay my bills, or I'm going to, I can still get some work done. But there's just some days where I'm like, why did I pick a job that has work so much with my hands, or whatever it is? And then I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, pretty much every job is that way. So it's just kind of getting through it. But I do think for me, it's comes back to this a lot, whether or not it's chronic illness or I'm just feeling burned out or overwhelmed. It's coming back to actually making stuff I enjoy making, even if it's for me, if it's not for the channel, if it's not for sale, but just making some things that I really enjoy. That always seems to re-spark that creativity for me. And obviously, if I'm in a flare, I can't do that, but I do often give myself the space to do that once I come back from a flare and just be like, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours this morning making something for my boys just to get my mind back in that creative space.
And I feel like knowing your why, like, why are you doing this? Why have you started this small business? For me, like, why do I film videos on YouTube? Why do I do this? And so for me, it's like knowing my why and then like leaning into that. So my why would be like to inspire people to be creative. So a lot of times, like just reading comments, like reading my YouTube comments, some of the good ones. Like we save, like Corey and I both do this. We like save the good ones into like a place where you could just sort of like give yourself a high five for a minute. So yeah, like saving those positive reviews that people have loved that product you made and sold to them, and reading those during those times to help you stay motivated. And yes, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm passionate about this business. And just like taking that time to know your why and like refresh your mind that this is why you're doing it. These are who these people, this is what this is for.
Yeah. And maybe recalibrating a little bit. If you get to that point where you're not able, when you're just like, I cannot do this, maybe take a little less work for a while. Maybe change up what you're doing. Maybe stop offering something that is particularly difficult for you to make in this moment. Again, I feel like this whole episode should just be called Pivot, like it is, that episode of Friends where Ross is just screaming pivot. I feel like having a chronic disease is just one day of pivoting after another to like what is working best for my body and trying really hard not to overwork a part of my body, because I think Angie and I both have the mental place a lot of times where like I can just work through it. But a lot of times with a chronic illness, that just makes it worse. And then you're toast and it sucks.
I am the chronic, I'll just work through this person. I have the flu. It's not a big deal. I'll just work through it. Like it doesn't matter what the illness is. I'll work through it. Sometimes with the stuff you just can't, and you need like a reset, a rest, some days off, come back motivated, passionate, ready to tackle your to-do list. And I am so much more productive after I take some time off to reset.
Yeah, I am too. It's very hard because I'm very type A. I'm very much want to overwork myself. It's really hard for me to just relax. That has been one of the biggest lessons I think in the last couple of years that I've learned, is to be like, it's okay to sit down for a few minutes. And I'm like there's still parts of my brain that are like, no, it's not. There's so much to do. And it's been an education.
All right. So before our last question for ourselves, if there's any last minute questions from the chat, we're about to start like scrolling through those and answering some of those. If you have any last minute questions for us and you're live on YouTube, feel free to ask those. And our last question is, what advice or encouragement would you offer to someone considering starting a small craft business while managing a chronic illness or chronic pain? I'm going to say, like, you can do it. It's going to be tough. There are going to be hard days. You can do it. But you do need to find the things that work for you. And what we've talked about, things that work for us during this episode, they might not work for you. They might not be the things that help you move along in your business. You might have to like think outside of the box a little bit with things that might work for you and your small business, like your particular illness, your particular pain. However, I do think you can do it. It's maybe just sitting down and thinking about it, and think about the overall advice we offered. The things about pivoting, asking for help, different things like that are probably applicable to most people that fall under this umbrella. So I would say, like, sit down, think about that type of advice. And I think you can do it. However, I would be prepared for those very hard days and days you just want to throw in the towel.
Yeah. And I think I would try to stop the comparison game. I'm constantly comparing myself to other creators who don't have fibromyalgia, who don't have a chronic illness, who don't have young kids at home. I mean, there's so many things that we could compare each other to, right? So I always come back to Bluey. We're telling our boys this all the time, is to run your own race, right? Like, what other people are doing are none of your concern, because that's what they're doing, and what you're doing is your concern. And if you spend too much time comparing yourself to somebody else, even if you're comparing yourselves to me and Angie, I mean, there's times I'm comparing myself to Angie and I'm like, why am I doing this? It's just not healthy. And it especially is really difficult because everybody's journey with their chronic illness is worse or is different. And so if you're comparing yourself to my journey, I'm in a pretty good place right now. You're going to be like, wait, why am I can't get out of bed today? And it's just like, don't worry, in a week or two, I won't be able to get out of bed. It'll be normal. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I think that comparison game, especially when you have a chronic illness or some other chronic condition, can just be so deadly to both your mind and your heart and just your whole idea about running a business. And so I really feel like trying to just run your own race is probably my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. And I will say, a game changer for me was finding like my triggers, listening to my body, finding those triggers, and hopefully, and this does not always work for me, but trying to like see ahead, like, oh my gosh, that's really going to trigger something. I need to like think about that a little bit. I was trying to see ahead and like foresee some things that could cause me to like basically spin out.
So Angie and I'll tell a story. We went to an event in Fargo, North Dakota in the summer. We went to an event in Utah and we were on our feet. It was the launch of the Cricket Venture. And Angie and I were on our feet that entire day on a concrete floor. And that night in the hotel room, Like, we each had our own hotel room. We're texting each other like, "I cannot move." Like, I hurt so bad. Like, my hips and my knees, I mean, it was really, really bad. And like, I was in cute shoes, so I wasn't even, like, taking care of myself by just even wearing trainers or something, right? Like, I was wearing, like, cute shoes. And so 2 weeks later, I think, we met up for another event in Fargo, North Dakota, and that whole event, we're like, "Let's find a place to sit down. Let's make sure we're wearing the right shoes. How are you feeling? Do we need to find a place to sit down?" Like, we actually learned from the first experience and then put all of those things into play the second time we got together, and I think that I was in a heck of a lot less pain for that second event, even though it could have been gone just the same way that the first event did.
Yeah, but back-to-back events was probably not the wisest decision for either of us, but that's a whole other topic of overscheduling.
Yes, don't overschedule yourself.
Chronic overschedulers. Okay, I think I'm gonna pull a few things from the chat.
Yeah.
So this first one is super interesting me. Do you either of you use a program like Dragon Speak Naturally to help you write blog posts, instructions, etc.? And I have never heard of this. Have you heard of this?
No,
Okay,
but
so
I'm
I'm
like,
always
the second she
excited.
commented, I was like, "I need to take notes because I feel
Yes.
like this is so much better than whatever talk to text I'm just, like, in with my phone
Yes,
here."
I just talk to text with my iPhone, so Dragon Speak Naturally was one thing. It's Beth that recommended that, so yeah, definitely I would check that out. Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out because I do feel like there's times when I'm like, my body's not functioning, but I like, right now I'm writing a blog post on how to use the tool in the laser to make tumblers, and I'm like, I could totally just talk about it for a while and at least have an outline that next time I do wanna sit at my computer, I could do it, things like that. Or you could write product listings, social media posts, all of these other things as well.
And here's another thing I've never heard of. Have you ever tried the precision glue press when gluing? And that
No,
was from Kim, and I'm excited to, like, Google that as well.
seriously. I feel like we're getting some good answers for us on this
Yeah, like,
episode.
thank you so much for answering our questions in the chat. Thank you. Okay. Oh, here's a good one, and I think you can take this one. Do you 2 take any medications for your pain? My pain is under control with meds, but fatigue is constant, and I feel like you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for my fibromyalgia, I'll just go ahead and say I take Cymbalta for my fibromyalgia. It has helped a lot with the nerve pain for me. I can still feel it trying, but there's not points where I'm in tears. So that has helped a lot. I know that Lyrica and gabapentin are two others that people have, that are kind of steps up from where I am. I'm lucky I'm still on a fairly low dose. It can really mess with my brain though. I do feel like there are times when I tell my husband, I'm like, it's like I'm thinking through a jar of jam today. Like I just cannot think clearly. And I find it is the worst if I miss a dose. So I actually have an alarm on my phone every single night at 7:15. I take that pill at the same time because if I'm even off an hour, I can tell. And so I do feel like if you are on a medication, taking that medication regularly, obviously go with what your doctor says. If your doctor is ignoring your pain, like this sucks. This sucks because it took us both years to get diagnoses. And I do feel like, finding a doctor who will listen to you is huge. And I walked in to see my doctor. I met him for the first time up here and he was like, let's figure this, and out and sending you to specialists. And I was like, I was trying to get that for so long at my old practice. And then I got a new doctor and things moved much more quickly after that. But I do feel like, yeah, meds, but also they can affect my fatigue and that brain fog for me too.
So for me, it depends on where I'm at. So right now I'm seeing a functional medicine doctor, and if none of you know what that is, basically combine like traditional medicine with homeopathic remedies into one. They are MDs, however, a lot of times it's not covered by insurance. So I do want to give that caveat. I am very, very blessed to have been able to like do this because I could not find a diagnosis through traditional means. So it depends on where I'm at, what kind of medicine I take. So right now I am on all like natural type of stuff. So herbs, vitamins, that type of thing. Depending on where I'm at, if I'm not in remission with Lyme, then I'm on like a whole antibiotic treatment that is very, very complicated. And then I can also be on some different natural remedies for that. So it just depends on where I'm at in the cycle of Lyme disease. So right now I'm on like all natural stuff, but it totally depends on the cycle, whether I'm on a prescription or not.
So somebody mentioned spoon theory. You can put that question from Judy up. I
Okay.
love spoon theory. So basically, spoon theory means that you get a certain number of spoons at the beginning of the day, or any given day you only have a certain number of spoons. And some days you have more spoons, and some days you have fewer spoons, and some days you're out of spoons. So basically, it's just a way to say like, I'm out of spoons for the day. So if there's a point in my day, a lot of times it's about 4 p.m. for me where my body is just not having it anymore. Oh, I'm out of spoons. I'm going in the house. I'm done. But I do find it helpful because there's some days where I wake up and I'm like, I've got a lot of spoons today. Like I can get a lot done. And I just kind of know that I have that capability. And then there's other days where I wake up and I'm like, low spoon day, don't have a lot. And I usually run out of spoons by the end of those days.
And Beth mentioned a 5-minute rule she heard from a class she attended. And this is for chronic pain sufferers. And it's basically is that you give 5 minutes to a task you need to do. And that's all you need to give if you're having a very bad day. So like allow yourself, just give the 5 minutes. And if you're having a very bad day, that's it. That's all you do. So that I thought that was a good one too.
I like that too because there are some days where there's not much to give, but you can give a little bit sometimes and you're like, okay, I'm just going to make the smallest amount of progress. And that can help so much with that mindset where you're like, I didn't do anything today, but you're like, I had almost no spoons, but I still did 5 minutes here. And I feel like that's a really great way to look at things.
Yep. All right. Did you see any other questions?
Let's see.
Not really a question, but yes, when you find a doctor, Dee said this, when you find a doctor that will listen and help you, that's the best thing you can do for yourself. And I hands down agree with that. And I cannot tell you how many doctors I went through before I got there. But
Yeah. He's my general practitioner. He's a nurse practitioner, not even a full doctor. I got in there and I said, here are all the things that suck. And he's like, okay. And then we started going down the list. And by the end of the appointment, I was crying because I was just like, oh my gosh, this man is actually listening to me after so long of people not listening to me. And I ended up getting my fibromyalgia diagnosis from a referral he gave me to a rheumatologist who was like the meanest guy on the planet. Like the rheumatologist was a jerk. And he basically was like, has nobody ever told you had fibromyalgia? And I'm like, well, this seems like a you problem, not a me problem. Like, talk to the doctors. It's not me. And he was just really dismissive and really rude. But I had that diagnosis. And from there, I could work with my regular doctor to figure out how to move forward.
yeah, we've talked about this before, but I feel like it's a rheumatologist.
Gosh, has anybody had a good experience with a rheumatologist? I don't know. I feel like every time I talk to somebody, everybody's like, oh, a rheumatologist was not so nice.
Yeah, I could tell some stories, but anyway.
Same. Oh gosh.
Okay, I feel like that's all. So I will get the link for Hungryroot working for those who join us live. I'm so sorry. But just a reminder, code Angie40 gets you 40% off your first delivery plus one free gift. I did get the QR code working if you're on YouTube, so you can scan that QR code. Sorry about that. I will figure that out. And otherwise, I'll figure it out before the podcast goes up, but it's link.craftingcamps.com/hungryroot.
All right. And then next week, we are having our friend Shelly Ontis on, and we're going to be talking about marketing tips for your small craft business. We've talked about a lot of things, but we haven't covered a lot about marketing. And so I'm really excited. Shelly is a lovely person. You guys are going to love her. So that's going to be on YouTube on 6/6, and then it's going to be on your favorite podcast networks on 6/10. If you want, you can sign up for our newsletter. We now have a Crafting Camps newsletter, which gives you basically all the things Corey and Angie are doing together in one place. And so there is a link for that down in the description of the YouTube video, as well as in the podcast notes. So if you want to join that list as well, that gives you basically everything that we are doing together.
And thank you for joining us for this personal episode of Crafting for Profit Live. We hope it inspired you, let you know that you're not alone on your chronic pain or chronic illness journey. And if you want to support us, just a reminder to share this episode with any friends. So you might have friends that definitely are struggling with chronic illness, chronic pain, might be trying to start a small business or just survive, and they might find something in this episode that resonates with them. So be sure to share this episode with them and then leave any ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast platform. So wherever you're listening to this at, if you're on YouTube, thumbs up is great, a comment, follow our YouTube channels. If you're on Apple, then drop down, leave a review, just wherever you are. And both of those are vital to our success, and we really appreciate it. So we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.